Hey everybody, this is Dev Philosophy, and I had a great conversation with MarsInLibra on Tumblr. She is a communist, Marxist, radical feminist, and this is an insider's look into the ideology that is feminism. So, what does feminism mean to you in your everyday life, basically?
That's interesting. It like in a way it affects all aspects of my life because as a woman I was born and raised, and children are raised differently ever since birth. And what we know from modern psychology is that the way that children are raised impacts the subconscious aspects of our minds that will continue to have an effect even into even into adulthood. But what feminism means to me, or like the goal of feminism, is liberation from patriarchy and the gender hierarchy of oppression that enables it. Um,
Okay,
Feminism is about liberation. Like in the 70s, they called feminists women's libbers, and that's always been the goal of feminism: is liberation, freedom from these social structures.
all right, okay, that's noble. Um, I want to get back to the how it's how kids are raised, and that's what creates this gender hierarchy.
Yes.
Um, couldn't at least some of that be contributed to by biology?
Like, here's the thing. The scientists have done a lot of studies on brain sex, and they found that women's and men's brains are really not that different. And also, there's this concept called brain plasticity, which is something that psychologists have known about for a very long time. Like, if you look at the brains of taxi drivers and the brains of bus drivers, taxi drivers have a larger navigational cortex in their brain because when you're a taxi driver, you're driving a different route all the time, every day. You're going from a to B and then C to D and then D to E, and this is going to be different every single day. But when you're a bus driver, you drive the exact same route every single day. You don't need to have as much of a navigational skills. Practice makes perfect for a reason. Which kid is going to grow up to be more interested in science? The kid who's told, oh, you have to play with baby dolls, the science kit isn't for you. And sure, not all girls are told that, because we're not all robots, but
Yeah.
there's a big pattern in society. If you go to the store, the pink aisle is for girls and that's got dolls in it, and the blue aisle is for boys and that has superheroes, tools, science kits, like all this crazy shit, like this big wide variety of things for boys.
Well,
So
there,
like
there,
there's
there.
this big pattern in society, but it's not perfect. Like there's big areas of gray, but these patterns need to be recognized because they do play a big influence in it.
Well, if
Our brains are constantly absorbing information from the world around us and building onto that. That's why practice makes perfect. The more we're exposed to a certain thing or told a certain thing, the more that neural net is being built up and being made physical.
yeah, that does happen. Where if you redo things over and over again, your brain just starts to adapt around that. But there,
Exactly. And
I've seen a couple of studies where they took infants, like very small children that have not that
oh,
can't
you're
even
talking
speak yet,
about
or
the Baron Cohen study, the study that was done by the guy who's literally the brother of the guy who does Borat. Did you know that he was the one who did that study?
that's interesting. But
Yeah.
that doesn't say that he doesn't have credentials.
Oh no, he does have credentials. I'm not doubting his
Oh,
credentials. That study is from the 90s and it's pretty outdated.
well, 20 years. It
We've
but
done a lot
it
more
was
studies
the
like
main part of
ever
the study
since
was
then.
to see how like what are the tendencies between males and females at a very young stage when society
Uh-huh.
hasn't even had time to pressure them yet. That was the whole point of the study.
That study, what they did was they just had images displayed to babies who were less than a week old. And in that study, they counted whether the boy children or the girl children looked longer at the images of either like human faces or like technical objects. And what they found was that the boy children looked at the like technical objects longer, and the girl children looked at the images of people longer. And they found this, and that was not every girl child looked longer at people, or every boy child looked longer at them, like technical things.
Yeah,
It's
they were
just
just
like a
trying to
pattern. It was
explain a
like
trend.
it was like 60% of the boy children looked longer at the technical things, and 60% of the girl children did. And you would argue that a week is too short for a baby to have absorbed any knowledge about the world around them. But I'm actually going to argue that it's not too short because that consists of the entirety of that baby's entire lifetime.
The entire
It's,
lifetime being a week.
being a week, exactly. So this is everything that baby has absorbed like a sponge in a week. Babies have minds that are growing so extremely fast. That's how we are able to learn to speak within only a year of like our brains being created. And yet we're able to communicate with language, which is an incredibly complex social construct for a human being to understand. And for a baby to be learning words, how is a baby learning words? How does a baby learn to speak?
Mainly by mimicking.
Exactly, by mimicking, by being spoken to. So when a baby is looking longer at like technical things, maybe because that's what the parents are showing it. Because parents kind of like try to enforce gender roles on babies ever since they're born. They put baby boys in clothes that say lady killer, even though he doesn't even know he might turn out to be gay, But like people are constantly putting babies into these gendered situations ever since the very moment they're born. Hell, even before they're born, when people find out the gender of their baby, they prepare the room and the very environment that baby is going to be spending most of their time in according to that baby's genitals. Well, like if it's a girl, they prepare a pink room full of cute, fluffy bunnies and shit. And if it's a boy, they prepare a boy room with like boys, quote unquote, boy stuff in it, They put more of those technical things in there because they assume that the boy will be more inclined in them. So they give him more of those things to play with. So of course he's going to be more attracted to that shit because for the first 7 weeks, maybe he's been given like toy baby tools while she's been given like a lot of attention and taught that she needs to feel pretty. You know what I mean? Like babies are impressionable. Their minds are like sponges. Well, human beings were born like blank slates.
This all comes down to the nature versus nurture argument. Where
it does.
But I remember a case where there was a male baby and they fucked up his dick in the circumcision to the point where it was you couldn't do anything with it, so they made it into a vagina and then treated him as a girl his entire life, and he was very dysphoric. He had very bad gender dysphoria as a result of it.
Of course.
What I'm saying is not all of the trends that we see in humans between male and female is only sociological. There probably is a very large evolutionary history to the psychology of both male and females.
The modern studies are really showing that there's not a lot of difference in men and women's brains. To speak of a male brain or a female brain, you might as well start talking about white people's brains and black people's brains. You know what I mean? That's the idea that men's brains are better suited to science is a male supremacist idea that has been used to oppress women.
I'm not saying that women's IQs are any lower than that. Any girl can achieve great heights in science or math or whatever. I'm not arguing that they can't. What I'm arguing is that the tendency to stick to gender roles isn't exactly sociological. Like when we evolved
I'm saying that idea is a male supremacist idea. The idea that gender roles are natural is a male supremacist idea.
Then why have they stuck around so long? Why are they seen in very old societies?
Because we're culturally ingrained in them. Because we don't pop into existence and then get raised by robots. We are raised by the people who raise us, who are raised by the people who raise them. History is a stream of people raising each other, and we absorb things subconsciously like sponges from the people around us. That's socialization.
But why is this such a huge trend among almost all human cultures?
Like, here's the thing. There's a lot of different theories as to how patriarchy got started. It's a really, really in-depth topic, and I'd rather explore a lot more other beliefs of radical feminism than just go into this one whole thing. But a really good book on the subject is The Origin of Patriarchy by Gerda Lerner. She's a PhD, and it's a really great book on this subject. But basically, it's been around for a long time because the isolation of women's oppression is within the family, and it's difficult to organize that when the family unit is taken out of the community. There's a long, like, historical basis for this, and it's gone up and down. Like, women's rights have gone up and down, and women have more rights in certain areas and certain places. But even in the very first novel ever written, The Tale of Genji, written by a woman, Murakami Shikibu, she expresses the sentiment, a man has no more right to treat a woman poorly because she is ugly than he has right to take advantage of her because she is pretty. And that's written in the very first novel that was ever written. And yet, here we are still having that same argument today. But at the same time, things have also progressed a lot since then. You know what I mean?
Well,
We progress slowly because if things progress over generations, we don't progress quickly. Change is not fast. Change is very rarely quickly.
oh, I know. We're only like a 50,000-year-old species or something like that.
Yeah, exactly. But to say that oh, things can it must be natural or innate just because they've been that way for a long time is not necessarily true. And
No,
there are
well,
isolated matriarchal societies in the world, and a lot
yes,
of
there are.
anthropologists talk about how like in the caveman days, the idea that rape was normal and men were just raping women. Nah, dude, because we're social creatures. We need each other to survive. And when we were fucking cavemen, men and women were more equal, and we had matriarchy when we were cavemen, and that was part of how we survived. And there was no rape in caveman society without the rapist fucking getting murdered. I tell you that much.
Then why is it so common in nature for things to rape? If we are also a product of nature, wouldn't it be a better?
We're a product of nature, but like rape is not necessarily happening as much as we think it does in nature.
Well,
Um, like
when do you choose? When are what is consent given in animal culture? Like in sharks can just rape on site mainly.
yeah,
They do
yeah,
that a lot. That's very common for
that's true.
sharks.
Sharks also don't have the same type of concept of like society and civilization that we do. Like
Well,
they
no
don't have
animal
language
does.
the way we have language. They can't communicate to each other and express their empathy to each other
But what
the way we do. Our
then? What
society,
was
humanity.
society before language? Before we had developed that much, when we were barely Homo sapien, when we didn't have a social structure. What?
Are you suggesting that if it's natural for men to rape women, then it's acceptable?
No, no, no. I'm saying that it. I'm saying that in pre-cavemen days, like when we were
Do
barely
you
Homo
believe men are
sapiens.
biologically programmed to be aggressive and violent and dominating? Do you believe that the reason 90% of violence is caused in the United States, according to FBI statistics, 90% of murders are committed by men, whether the victim is male or female, or 90% of rape, whether the victim is male or female, is committed by men? Do you believe that's because of biological things in men? Do you hate men that much? Or do you believe that it's because society has raised men to be that way and do
No,
not hate men and believe
no,
men can change for the better?
I don't hate men either. It's just that.
I know. I'm just being quirky and phrasing it that way because a lot of the times, just by pointing out that men are committing 90% of violence, that people accuse me of hating men when I find that really interesting because I think that men are doing this because they're being raised to do so. And that ties into how feminism is anti-capitalist because the capitalist society requires like this lower working class to work in the factories, do the jobs, and also to do war for the upper class so that way the upper class can like you know reap the spoils of war and reap the spoils of labor that the working class is creating for them. And so they need a class of soldiers, and they want men to be those soldiers because they want women to be the domestic home laborers. And not only that, but if you divide men and women that way, you make even the lowest man think that he's biologically superior to the highest woman. You create a class divide where the men and women of the poor can't unite against the upper class. So the upper class require men to be violent in order to fight in wars for them. And that's why little boys are taught to play war and to play with guns ever since they're little kids. And they're taught that it's natural and that it's just them being boys. And that's reinforced into male psychology.
Well, there is a problem with that. Like in the evolution of humans, we adapted to what we needed to do. This is why men are usually physically stronger, while women usually have a better, like a higher pain threshold in order to give children more easily. That these things they tend to cause small divides through our society, and I'm saying that biology tends to do this, like nature tends to do that, but because we are a social and cognitively uh, adept species, we grow past that. I'm just saying that the tendencies are there, usually because of biology, but not just because of that. There are a lot of sociological pressures that will shape a lot of different humans.
I think that sociological pressures and biological functions, it's pretty easy to tell the difference between the two of them. For example, smiling. Smiling is cross-cultural. Even blind people smile. Smiling is a biological function of the human mind because it allows us, when we see another person smiling, we are already biologically programmed in our minds to know that that means happiness and joy, right? And even blind people smile. It's a biological function. But we can tell that something is not a biological function if things are different in different cultures, or not. It's not if not everybody's doing them. Like the idea that women need to make ourselves pretty and wear makeup and stuff. That's not present in every culture. That's not present in every culture. So therefore, this is a product of culture.
Yeah,
Women
beauty
are,
is relative.
you know,
That's obvious. Beauty is
or
has
like
always been relative.
makeup has been worn by men in many cultures and been seen as a very manly thing in many cultures. The idea that pink is a girl's color, boy is a blue's color, that's less than 100 years old, that idea. Women shaving our legs, that idea is less than 100 years old. So there are all these things that we take to be innate and natural that are actually products of society. And it's really interesting to see how this happens in other species. Like if you want to Google something really cute and adorable, there's this husky dog who was raised by cats and acts like a cat. It has cat body language. It does the cat love thing where it like tucks the front paws in while it's sitting, It has cat body language, even though it's a dog, just because this dog was raised by cats. Or there's this funny gif of like this cat prancing in this weird way with its legs. And if you look at the way the cat's moving, somebody made this excellent comment where this cat is prancing the way a show horse does. And if you look in the background of the image, you can see the cat is in a stable. Well, that cat is not just in any stable. That cat is in a stable for show horses. And that is why that cat is prancing the way a show horse does, because it observed the animals around it doing that. The cats don't have as big of a brain as us humans do. Cats think all species are the same species as themselves for some reason. So that cat imitated the horse's behavior and started prancing like a show horse. So feral children who have been raised outside of society don't have a concept of gendered behavior either. Feral children can't even speak language. So much of who we are and how we are so advanced, our socialization, our culture, our ability to teach ourselves since childhood is an integral part of our evolution.
Yeah,
and because of that,
you could argue that is biological. That's the only thing that's set us apart from other primates, and that's the only thing that's been passed down genetically.
Do you believe men biologically are more prone to be violent than women?
Yes.
All right, and
that is mainly due to hormones like testosterone. Testosterone makes you more aggressive and violent.
Like, here's the thing. I'll agree that it does, but here's the thing. It doesn't, not to that insane degree. Not to the degree where it will cause 90% of violence to be caused by men. Men are causing this violence because we need to change society. I believe if we raise men in a different way that does not enable this violence, that men would not be that violent. Because women are just as capable of violence as men, but we're not out there.
That is definite. No matter
in the way we're raised, and that's in the difference in the way we're raised, not in the difference of biology. Or to speak of a male brain or a female brain, you might as well speak of a male liver or a female liver. They're not that different.
No, the thing that shapes us mainly is our hormones, and hormones.
No, it's not. The main thing that shapes us is our environments. Hormones are very weak compared to that.
But hormones that can cause
it's not hormones
that make a damage.
Driver better at navigating than a bus driver. It's not hormones. It's life experience, and that's mainly what we are is life experience. If you want to see pure hormones, look at a feral child running around on all four legs, not even able to walk because people can't walk without being taught to.
Here's the thing. Like, if you look at someone with a male with less testosterone than a male with a higher amount of testosterone, that male with a higher testosterone is more likely to be aggressive and violent and all that. I'm saying that's where the trend comes from. I don't.
That's true, but that man is also a human being with a human mind, and he is able to control his anger if he has enough societal reinforcement to not express that
Then how
anger.
do you
But
explain sociopaths that have no concept of morality or what is
that's
good or
like
bad?
a whole different thing, that like talking between male socialization and female socialization. Not everybody who's a sociopath is violent, and not everybody who's violent is a sociopath. So like now we're like going way off tangent. So I'd like to bring this conversation back to nurture versus nature. Is male violence natural or not? Because sociopaths are like a whole other subject.
I was just bringing up as an example. I didn't want to go down that path.
Okay, yeah, because like then you have to compare male sociopaths and female sociopaths, and in which case you'll still find, that like male sociopaths are still more violent on average, which is why even though men and women are mentally ill at the same rates, whenever people try and see on the news a man committed an act of violence, and the first thing they do is they blame mentally ill people, when that's actually kind of fucked up in a way, because there's just as many women who are mentally ill as men, but still 90% of violence is being perpetrated by men. And as a feminist, I believe that that's not inevitable. I believe that we can reduce the amount of male violence, and I believe we can do that by changing the way that our family is structured, and that means ending patriarchy.
Okay, so
Because patriarchy is the family structure that enables male violence.
what would be the end of patriarchy? Would that be matriarchy? Is that what you're vying for?
Yes, and a lot of people are really threatened by that word. I get
Yeah,
a lot of
'cause-
emotional, and the reason is because they think that matriarchy is just the reverse of patriarchy.
well,
They look at a
technically,
patriarchal family.
that's what it is as a
No,
word.
that's not what it is. That's what people assume it is because they think matriarchy is just the reverse of patriarchy. People just assume that. But what is matriarchy? If you look at matriarchal societies in human history, we see a lot of egalitarian societies. Or if we look at matriarchies within the animal kingdom, within our cousins, like in chimpanzees, what you find is a bunch of women in the center who raise children, and they're in charge of the family structure. And so matriarchy is a communal family structure. Men are not subservient to women under matriarchy, because the thing is, in order to raise children, all a woman needs from a man is a little sperm donation. On the other hand, if a father wants to claim ownership over a child, then he needs to claim ownership over the body of the woman that is nurturing that child, and he needs to claim ownership, over the child, like that way. Matriarchy or patriarchy, who owns the children, the mothers or the fathers? Matriarchy does not require women to dominate men, because a woman doesn't need to dominate a man to get a little sperm donation for him. On the other hand, if a man wants to retain possession over a woman while her body is incubating the child, you know what I mean? Like, that's why women take men's last names, as a symbolic of his ownership over her body, that her body produces his children. No, it produces her children.
Well, genetically, they're both a product.
Genetically, you can argue that, but I mean, if you were the guy, just because you brought Da Vinci his paint doesn't mean you should be allowed to take credit for painting the Mona Lisa.
No. But
the guy who fetches the paint for Da Vinci does not get credit for painting the Mona Lisa, even though he fetched the paint. That's the paint he fetched right up there on the Mona Lisa, literally consisting of the paint.
A zygote and a sperm are half and half, exactly down the middle of chromosomes. So that just
but that's not that.
That's not an insignificant amount of.
Because that's just the DNA. What it comes down to, who does more of the work? Men like to narrow it down to just the DNA, because then they can make it look like it's 50-50. But pregnancy is not fucking 50-50.
Well, in nature, it used to be where the male would protect and provide for the female during that incubation period, because a female is.
A man would only have to do that if he owned that woman. On the other hand, if it was a communal situation where everybody was just like part of a community and nobody had ownership over anyone else, what would the woman need protecting from?
No.
The
This
implication
is
is that he's
purely.
protecting her from other men who also view her as a piece of property and want to take her for themselves, so she can bear their children and raise their children instead of this other man's. It's like these men fighting over women as if we're property.
Yeah, that's what we used to fight over. Actually, in the days of tribes, women would be taken
In
as
the
loot
This is
because
after agriculture was discovered. Before
no,
agriculture,
this was
we were
before
egalitarian.
agriculture. This was before
Before
agriculture.
agriculture,
Back when we
we
were
were
just raiding
egalitarian.
parties, when all we were hunter and gatherers. We had no form of agriculture until that's what created civilization. There was a long period before agriculture where we were just raiding parties and we would
You would
kill and steal women.
you assume we're raiding parties, but that's not hunter
Then
and gatherer doesn't assume you're a raiding party.
no,
You can be
there
very
were
peaceful as a hunter gatherer
then
society.
why were
And in fact,
there
you
were
might want to
signs of
say, why would you
battlefields in prehistoric
necessarily want
societies?
to war?
There,
Why would you necessarily have to? It's when agriculture came about that we invented war, because agriculture means land is now property, like, and that means there's now something to fight over. But if you're just moving around like a nomadic cave people, you probably just want to trade with any group you meet, and you don't want to like increase
what
the
if they
danger.
have more food than you and you want that? That when they had more food than you or they had more women, but you had more men to take all that, they would do it.
Here's another interesting theory: is that the physical weakness of women is actually a product of society as well, in the form of diet culture that is pushed heavily on women ever since childhood, when we are taught to eat very, very little. Women are taught consistently ever since we're children, before we even begin to develop into puberty. We're taught to eat less. But on the other hand, have you ever heard the phrase growing boy needs his vegetables, a growing boy needs his food? Men are taught to consume as many nutrients as possible so they can grow up to be big and strong. But
In
women are also discouraged from gaining muscle mass. We are discouraged from participation in sports, told that our sports participation is inferior to male sports participation. Even when we do get professional sports, the coaches are a joke, or we're given, like women's soccer teams are made to play on fake grass, so that's why women's teams can't do the slides and like all that stuff, because fake grass fucking burns. Like, there are professional male soccer players who will say that they will not play on fake grass because they can't do anything on it.
does it just come down to the point that not a lot of people watch these sports, so the entertainment venues are going to be of less quality, or there's not going to be enough to maintain an actual field?
What's interesting about that is, like, it's like saying, not a lot of people do this, so that way we got to keep things the way they are. But the thing is, we
No.
can
What
change
what
what a
I'm
lot of
saying
people
is
do.
when
They don't. We can. Society is malleable. We can change. We can change what the societal trend is.
it's the thing is
We
it's
have.
not we wouldn't give someone fake grass because they're women. We're giving them fake grass because they're not making a lot of money off of this
No, it
compared
is.
to
It,
the other sports.
it is because they're women, though. But it goes in a cycle, because the women are given fake grass to play on. They can't perform the like slides and like more extreme things, because they're not given the tools to literally do those things. And then they're told, oh, nobody wants to watch you because you're not as entertaining. When part of the reason they're not as entertaining is because they weren't given the proper equipment that allows them to perform the things that are entertaining. So it's like this cycle. We can fucking change it. Things don't have to be the way they are. This is not the end point of history. History's a continual stream, and we're just one little blip in it. It's gonna fucking keep going long after we're dead. So things are gonna change, and it's up to us to change that.
I think you're taking all of this I guess dehumanization, I guess, or degradation of women as intentional. I don't. I have no idea how you think that any of this was intentional.
It's interesting because it's like a societal thing that started, and in a way it's intentional, and in a way it isn't intentional, because like we're all like raised this way, by society, so it's subconscious, so it's not like intentional in that sense. Like, there are a lot of harmful behaviors people perform because of the way they're raised to see them as normal. Like, I'm white, I'm bisexual, and like, as a white person, that means that I was raised in a white supremacist society. It means that I grew up like thinking that racist jokes were okay to make, and anybody who doesn't like take a racist joke is just being overly sensitive, you know? But in reality, these jokes are actually perpetuating harmful stereotypes, and if I participate in that, then I'm participating in keeping racism normalized. On the other hand, in a non-racist society, racist jokes would never make sense because they wouldn't have the context to understand those jokes.
The thing is, when you hear someone make a racist joke now in 2017, the reason why it's usually funny is usually because it's so absurd that
Could you
anybody
hold on for just a second? My mom is like giving me food. Like I just need to get my food.
Oh, okay.
Okay, yeah, I know, Mom, but I'm doing something important right now. Okay, sorry. Like my mom was just back. She was picking up food for everyone.
Oh, okay.
Anyway, but I can wait on that. Where was I? I'm sorry, I got distracted by the idea of food.
I was saying how in 2017,
you believe that racism doesn't exist in 2017?
No. I don't think that it doesn't exist. There are real racists, but when someone makes a racist joke, I don't think that the joke is usually that it is so absurd that someone thinks this. That is why it's funny. It's because the guy that's saying it is obviously not intending that it's racist. He's not. He's saying it because it's absurd.
I think that's a really like cute and naive and like very positive and benefit of the doubt like type of thought to have. I also think that it's interesting when I analyze your thought there. Your thought is focused on the idea of that individual who's making the joke and whether or not their intentions are bad. So your focus right there is like trying to clear that person of wrongdoing and be like, guys, he didn't mean it. Like your focus is on an individual level, and your focus is on giving the benefit of the doubt, and your focus is on whether or not that person should feel guilty. Now, my focus is not on the individual level. My focus is on the structural level. My focus is, by making this joke, am I perpetuating an idea that still exists in society that is harming other people? Am I in any way laughing?
How does a stereotype cause physical harm to somebody?
Okay, so the idea that like black people are dumb is literally keeping black people from college and all that stuff. Like,
what do they think because like, someone says they're dumb makes them dumb?
Shocks me, huh?
Do they think that because someone says they're dumb means that they are dumb? Because if that's the case, then that person might actually be stupid.
No, dude, it isn't that. It's about institutional power. It's about the fact that the person who believes you are dumb is the guy who is accepting your college admission letter. So the racist asshole has a position of power over you and can prevent you from going to college. That's what that means. The guy who laughs at that joke, the guy who makes that joke, is literally preventing you from advancing your life because he thinks that black people are inferior. Okay?
So you're saying that if someone makes a racist joke, that means that they are then racist. And that means that
in a way, yes. If I, as a white person, like, and I've accidentally done it, you know, and you know, and here's the thing: a lot of people hear terms like racist or misogynist, and they just immediately knee jerk emotionally, and they behave as if somebody just called them stupid or an idiot or some other type of like bullshit insult, like, oh, you fucking pancake eater, you know, like some, you know. They act like they're just like the other person is saying that purely for the purpose of offending them or being mean. It's like, no, dude, if a black person came to me and told me as a white person that I was being racist, my response should not be, oh, I'm not racist because I do all this and blah, blah. No, my response should be, how? What did I say? I hear them out and hear what they got to say because they have a perspective on racism that I as a white person will never experience because I don't live day in and day out ever since childhood aware of how my race is going to change the way that people are treating me in society.
How does your okay? So you're saying that because someone says a racist joke, they are then racist, and because they are racist, that means that people are being oppressed somewhere.
Like it's like perpetuating it. It's like a drop in a bucket. Like imagine there's like a bucket of water and it's like the race is a bucket and it's like every racist thing that has ever happened is like a water droplet in that bucket. Do you want to drop another water droplet in the bucket of racism? Yes or no?
The thing is that just because you say something
You know what I mean?
funny and it has to do with race doesn't mean that you are in fact a
That's true.
racist.
There are a lot of funny things that have to do with race that aren't racist. Like,
Then
I mean,
say an
I can't think of a particular good example off the top of my head right now because I'm not really like, because I usually make jokes in response to like situations, you know? That's just like my sense of humor. But like, there are a lot of good jokes. I mean, like, and especially jokes made by people of color on racism are pretty hilarious jokes usually. Because they're jokes that are made to be relatable to the marginalized group rather than jokes that are taking the piss out of the marginalized group.
What about, well, it's it's
Like,
just it,
it's
it,
like,
it
okay, like for example, like I hope this is a good example for me to use. Like for example, the other day on my dashboard, I saw like some black woman that I follow on Tumblr who you contacted me originally through Tumblr, so you know that I have one.
yeah.
And on my dashboard, and I see her post this photo of like the uncle who's like barbecuing at the cookout starter pack, and it's like pictures of like a pair of like these specific men's sandals and like a specific grill and like a specific outfit that apparently like everybody who's black has an uncle who dresses like that. So like that's like a joke about like black uncles made by black people within their community, a joke of that they're like finding relatable. You know what I mean?
But if I say the exact same joke, I am racist.
I didn't think you would be, but like, why would you say that joke unless you grew up around like black people, and then it probably wouldn't make you racist. Like, here's the thing: like,
Then
racist
it's
jokes
then
aren't just jokes about race. Racist jokes are jokes that perpetuate a specific negative stereotype that actively like puts people down. Because do you want to laugh at someone else's suffering, or do you even want to be laughing at the idea of someone else's suffering?
that's
You
the
know?
reason why a lot of comedy is dark. It's just so you can cope with tragic and horrible things.
Oh yeah, I mean, I
That's the
love
whole point
dark
of
humor.
dark comedy.
I love dark humor. It's actually one of my favorite sources of humor. Is dark humor, but I think the best dark humor is like self-deprecative, like self-depreciative. Like if you want to make jokes about how shit you feel versus making jokes about how you are superior to another type of person, like making jokes about how women belong in the kitchen. That's a joke that women are supposedly inferior, and not only that, but that joke is a real situation on how men actually treat women still, even today, even in 2017. There are women out there being treated like that by men,
Not a
and
single
people laugh at that.
woman is not a single woman is physically forced to be in a kitchen in America without that being illegal. You can't hold someone
Like,
against their will in a kitchen at all, at any cost. There's
have
no
you
reason.
do you, what about those people in Utah who have like multiple wives? Are
I
they
am
not
not in
in
fit.
America?
I don't care if someone has multiple wives, but I don't like the religious implications of that. I'm pretty sure if a polygamous relationship were to arise, like I think there was like three lesbians wedded together. One of them's gonna be in the kitchen at one point, but that's their voluntary thing.
Yeah, they're also all lesbians, so it's not like one man has a bunch of wives that all serve him in
Well,
some way.
in a lot of
You know
cultures
what I
there are
mean?
in a lot of
That's
cultures there are women that have there's one woman and she is married to a whole bunch of guys. Then how
which
does
culture?
um I forget which one, but I've seen it
What
done.
country?
I think I think it was for a religious reason. I think maybe it also I think it was Papua New Guinea or somewhere in the
I've
Polynesian
never heard
area.
of that.
Well, yeah, I've seen that somewhere. I'm really pissed I can't think of it off the top of my head. But yeah, there are some cultures that have one woman and a whole bunch of men.
All right.
And
Um,
the
I hate to just take I hate to just take your word for it without a source. I mean, I try to
I know.
give people a source usually, whether it's the title of a book or an author, or the name of the scientist who did the study, or the name of the study if I can recall that. But I mean, even if I can't cite it specifically, I try and at least reference it so the other person could look it up if they really felt like looking it up
Yeah,
at least.
I'm trying. It's old information. I could be
But
wrong,
do you have
but
any? Do you have any other questions prepared?
um, yeah. What is the absolute goal of the feminist movement? What is the
The
end
goal,
goal?
the end goal is liberation from patriarchy and gender, and what that means is that no more patriarchy, no more male ownership over female bodies, no more idea of like uh, men owning a woman's body or her children. There would be no abortion debate anymore because nobody in society would consider that idea legitimate. It would mean a matriarchal communal society because feminism is anti-capitalism. Feminism is a communist movement, and because that is how humans have ideally, in the most healthy way, raised children is in a community type society,
In a
community.
very collectivist kind of
Yes,
way.
collectivist type of way, exactly, which brings motherhood out of the private sphere, which is this tiny little nuclear family home, and makes motherhood part of the public activity of daily life. So women are not put into these homes where they just raise children and then they grow up and have no friends and be alone. It's just it's a part of a part of society.
Well,
And then freedom from gender means that we raise boys and girls the same way since the day they are born. We do not tell this is for girls, this is for boys. None of that. We raise boys and girls the same way.
yeah,
That's
I don't care. I don't think there should be any gender roles. You should be able to pick whatever the fuck you want, but
Mhm.
that that doesn't mean that they're forced to. I think it just creates this trend of guys having a lot more interest in mechanical things and stuff like that.
like
It
that.
creates a trend, but it's not something you have to follow absolutely.
I mean, you don't have to, but I mean, when I was a little girl, I was interested in cars, for example, and when my dad and my brother would look at the car and like the engine and stuff, I'd be curious and want to hang out and see what was going on and learn something about the engine. But then my dad was like, "Whoa, whoa, whoa! This is father son time, and you're interrupting. Go do something else." And I was not allowed to learn about how a car worked because I didn't have the right genitals.
But that's your dad.
Yes, and that I'm a person who exists today. And you know what? There's a lot of women like that. Where did my dad get that idea from?
Um, there's a lot of archaic ideas still around,
Yes,
yes, but
exactly.
that doesn't mean that
And
everybody has these archaic ideas. Like my dad didn't. I am completely like I don't know the fuck about
anybody
cars or
who
whatever.
says that they don't have these ideas in their mind is lying. I have these ideas in my mind. You do. Everybody does. It's society. In
No,
order where
I
nobody is a special snowflake, nobody has truly original independent thoughts. Just look at feral children. They don't have. They're running around like animals on all fours. The idea everybody wants to believe that they're fully in control of their own choices and that their own choices are 100% pure what they truly choose. But the fact of the matter is, there's a lot of social reinforcement that's subconscious that goes into the choices we make. Like, for example, if you start wearing makeup in junior high school and now suddenly everybody's complimenting you and telling you how beautiful you are, compared to the girl who never wears makeup and never gets these compliments, what does that teach girls? If you wear makeup, you get compliments and told you're valuable. If you don't wear makeup, you're not getting these compliments. In fact, you're getting told you're ugly and you're not valuable.
why not just teach the kid not to give a fuck?
Well, here's the thing. In order to do that, we'd have to change society because we're getting messages not just from our parents, not just from our friends, not just from our teachers or other authority figures in our lives. We're also getting messages from every piece of media we consume. This all goes back to brain plasticity and how the brain is shaped by physical experience. And that is why, taxi drivers have a bigger navigational cortex than bus drivers do. Practice makes perfect. And we are practicing gendered behavior since the day we're born.
Then then how would you what are the steps that would take for your movement to get to where you want it to go? Like what's the process that you're planning on going through?
All right. In order to do that, we would have to dismantle capitalism and racism at the same time as well, and that's going to be really tough. And that's
Yeah,
and
yeah,
the reason we would
that sounds like a big. Very
Yeah,
in-depth.
but that's why it's important that these movements remain in solidarity with each other, while at the same time each focusing on their own goals. And while so each movement is focusing on its own goals, but also aware of how that goal is got to be related to the other struggles that are united with it. Because in order for women to be able to raise children without being dependent on men for survival, which is what the patriarchal family structure is about. It's about making sure that a woman requires a man to survive. Which is why our history goes back into paying women less, hiring women less, the glass ceiling, and all that financial security for
But
women, telling women we deserve to be paid less if we get pregnant.
but what
And
about now,
whatnot.
when a woman can go out and make her own way and get money for food and her child? Like, she can go out and be completely independent
Yeah,
and still raise a
exactly.
family.
We're not enough women are able to do that. There's still a lot of women who are not able to do that, and what we need to do is break down the barriers that disallow women from doing that. So
Like
there's
what?
still the wage gap is still real. I mean, if you I'm not here to argue every single feminist point, because if you disagree with it, then we'll be here a long time. But I mean, for the sake of feminism, feminists believe the wage gap is real, and that's
Yeah.
all you need to accept, is that feminists believe the wage gap is real. We believe that's a big problem. We also think that access to equal opportunity for education is extremely important, because without educational opportunities, people can't advance in life.
Yeah, of course. Don't we already have something like that?
Um,
Aren't we at least
I don't believe
close?
so. I mean, capitalism is making it so that really only rich people can afford these things,
Well,
and that's where
I'm middle
white
to
feminism
lower
comes in.
middle class, and I'm still going to college.
Okay, I'm lower middle class. I'm not able to go to college, so it's kind of like a thing that way. Like, I know a lot of poor people who are not able to go to college, and a lot of people who are in college who had to drop out because of the debt, or a lot of people who completed college but now are in so much extreme debt that they're conflicted over their choice of having gone to college.
Yeah, well,
Um,
to do
but
that, you would
yeah,
have to implement like
I feel like we've veered off from the original
yeah,
question that you
sorry.
asked me. Could you ask that again just to refresh my memory?
What is the process it would take for you to get from
Okay.
now to the matriarchal communist
Yeah,
ideal?
we would have to give women full autonomy over our bodies. No more abortion debate. Just a woman is allowed to do with her body what she wants. I believe we'd have to change our institution of marriage completely. We would also have to change our institution of capitalism. Because capitalism exploits women in the beauty industry, for example. There's a lot of things that we'd have to change, and that's why it's called radical feminism, because it is a radical change of going to the very root. In Latin, radical means to the root, and it means going to the root of the problem and pulling it out by the roots. But what's interesting about Marxism, which is a belief that feminism is founded upon, is that Marxism states that change is like slow and generational, and every generation will put up with less than what the generation before it put up with. So in that sense, we're always going to be moving forward slowly, generation by generation. So I just think it's going to take a long time. Do I have all the answers right now? I don't, but I know that I'm part of that history, part of that chain that's pushing for progress, and that there will be women after me who are able to solve the problems that I wasn't able to solve.
That that's a noble ideal. Um, so what? I actually have another question to ask. Is what did you do you know about the women's march that happened not too
Yeah,
recently?
I was marching in the Women's
Oh,
March
you
in
were.
Los Angeles, actually.
Okay, so what was that for?
Um, that was for a lot of different things to a lot of different people. For me, it was about the reproductive legislation, and Donald Trump's sexist comments that he's made about women, like grab him by the pussy, the way he treats his wife, which is really creepy, the way he treats his daughter, which is really creepy, and just the fact that he's made these comments about women, and he's able to sign this legislation that denies women our bodily autonomy. He's also the kind of guy who runs beauty pageants. If that doesn't say what he thinks about women, the idea, the fact that he is the kind of guy who feels like he should judge women's looks to the degree that he creates an institution that allows him to do that. So this protest for me was a lot about protesting everything that Donald Trump stands for in terms of his sexism on women. But there were a lot of other groups there too. Like there were a lot of people who are just protesting Trump's policies completely. There were a lot of people who were against the wall, pro-immigration protesters at the march as well. And there were a lot of like LGBT people protesting at the march as well.
Why were the LGBT protesting? I don't think Trump has done anything homophobic.
His vice president literally supports conversion therapy.
Well, yes, his vice president does.
So, I mean, sure, Trump invited Caitlyn Jenner into his house and said that Caitlyn Jenner can use any bathroom in Trump Tower, but Trump isn't exactly a champion of LGBT rights when you consider the fact that that includes lesbians, that includes bisexual women, that includes, well, maybe he's okay with trans women if he's okay with Caitlyn Jenner, or maybe he's just okay because Caitlyn Jenner is a friend of his. Perhaps they do belong to the same country club, which is a male-only country club, by the way. If
a private organization wants to be male only, that's their choice.
Exactly. I'm fine with that. I just think it's kind of interesting for Caitlyn Jenner to continue to be a member of said organization. But especially, but that's like a whole another topic that a lot of people find controversial in radical feminism, which is that we define woman as an adult human female. We do not believe that men can understand what it's like to exist in a female body. We don't believe womanhood is about conforming to patriarchal gender roles. We don't believe womanhood is about a liking to wear makeup, liking to wear pretty clothes. We don't think that's what womanhood is about. We think that's an artificial construction that women have been raised and taught that this is how we need to be, and we are against those things. So sex dysphoria is a very real medical condition, and everybody with a medical condition is entitled to the medical treatment for their medical condition. If a man has a mental illness that makes him believe that he is a woman, he's entitled to the medical treatment that will help him out in whatever way that means. If that means he needs to pretend to be a woman in order to ease this mental illness that is making him feel that way, then that's his medical treatment. But does that mean he deserves to speak for me in my political movement when I have had more abortions, my personal self, than any trans woman who has ever lived and will ever exist combined, and it will never be an issue that their group of people has to deal with? We're completely different people, where we have totally different needs, totally different experiences of the world. I, for one, will never know what it's like to be raised as a boy and have a boy's childhood. Where you're told boys will be boys, where the big difference in how we raise boys and girls. I'll never know the intimate experience of a boy's childhood, but trans women do. But trans women will never understand the intimate experience of a girl's childhood either. Even Jazz Jennings, who's on TV being a female, a male to female transgender girl, a little boy who's probably going to turn out to just be gay, and yet this person has a sister, and Jazz is being taught, even though you don't have your own womb, you can just use your sister's. And the sister is being taught that, in order to be a good person, she would have to let Jazz use her womb, because Jazz is so incredibly oppressed, because Jazz wants to do feminine things. And just comparing the way that the sister, who is biologically female, is treated compared to the male transgender child it speaks volumes, really.
I'm pretty sure what they meant was not in any way literal, and I'm pretty sure they didn't say that so many times that it was completely absorbed by that child.
It was absorbed by the child to the point where Jazz said themselves in an interview. In the interview, actually, the interviewer asks, "How do you feel about not being able to have any children of your own?" And Jazz responds by saying, "That's okay because I can just use my sister."
I meant the sister. Do you think she actually will believe that?
That she has to that in order to be a good person she has to
Let
accommodate Jazz. Yes, of course, I believe
you
that she
think
will
she
do
will
that.
actually go through with such an act?
Of course, she
Really?
will be a
Because
surrogate
that's
for
pretty
Jazz.
odd.
She's being raised to believe that's not odd at all, dude. Women are constantly raised to. There are women who are anti-abortion, right? Who
Yeah.
are pro-life, and you'll a lot of times see those women express sentiments like, "If I was pregnant with a baby, I would die and let the baby live." Women are raised in a culture that literally expects us to sacrifice ourselves for babies and for men. We're expected to do that, and that's part of the culture that we're
Well,
raised in.
you see that in all nature.
See what?
You see mothers willing to sacrifice themselves for the life of their offspring in many
You don't.
cases.
In many cases, you see that, but there are other instances in nature where you don't see that, or entire times when a woman's body, for example, or a female animal's body will slow the pregnancy process down or stop it completely in order to keep that from functioning, in order to protect the female's life. There are also female animals that have to abandon their own young and will abandon their own young if they're unable to fend for themselves and their young.
But I'm saying that the majority of animals, like
So, in other words, you're telling me that you have this belief, this deeply rooted belief that women and females are by nature self-sacrificial.
I'm not saying that this is deeply rooted. I'm just saying that
You
yeah,
have this belief that you feel is very difficult for you. You feel it's very difficult for you to believe that a woman's natural nature is not to be self-sacrificial.
no, I'm just saying that it tends to be in nature, and
So you
that's what I'm
believe women
saying.
are naturally. Well, I don't believe women are naturally self-sacrificial, and I believe that it's misogynistic to think that women are by biology designed to sacrifice ourselves for
I'm
others.
not saying that you're designed. I'm saying that there's a tendency towards that.
I
I'm not saying
don't.
that you
I'd have
cannot
to see
overcome
some
your
evidence.
biology.
I'd have to see some evidence in order to believe that women are naturally, or that females in general are naturally inclined to be self-sacrificial. I'd have to see some evidence for that.
Okay, I I, I don't have any at the moment, but
All
uh,
right, but anyway, continue on. Do you have any
I
other questions?
yes, I also I also wanted to ask you a little bit more about So, do you consider yourself a trans exclusionary feminist?
Oh God, I include trans men because feminism is for female people. It's about things that affect female people, which is being raised since childhood to be self-sacrificial and prioritize others, be nurturing, like forced into this specific gender role. That's something trans men face as well, and also being the reproductive justice aspect. For example, Cherno Biko, a trans woman who spoke at the Women's March, is an admitted rapist who tried to forcibly impregnate a trans man. Now, when it comes to feminism, feminism is about reproductive rights, mother's rights, father's rights. Trans women have the reproductive rights of fathers, and trans men have the reproductive rights of mothers. So trans men belong in the feminist movement, and trans women don't.
Okay, so you're only going to include people that were born physically female.
Exactly, because that's what feminism is for. Just like Black Lives Matter doesn't include Rachel Dolezal, even if she gets surgery to alter her skin color.
Okay, okay. Um, all right. Do you agree with Black Lives Matter?
Of course, I think that it's a very important movement going on in today because Black women especially bear the brunt of oppression, and Black lesbians are suffering three different kinds of oppression, and they need as many movements to uplift and support them as they possibly can get.
And uh, I actually wanted to ask you something about Antifa. Are you
Okay,
uh,
I'm sort of familiar with that, but you can go ahead and ask your question.
there? they hold they are anarcho communists, and I
Anarcho-communists. Well, some of them are anarcho-communists. Some of them are anarcho capitalists. But like a lot of people make fun of ANCAPs. But anyway, yeah.
yeah
Some of them are just straight anarchists, and some of them are just straight communists too. It's like a mix of various left political linings,
and
from
uh
my understanding, anyway.
and did you agree with them stepping in during the Berkeley riots?
That is an act I'm not familiar with, so I wouldn't be able to give my opinion on that because I don't have enough details on that.
Oh,
I'm
okay.
still pretty big on that incident. I've been more focused lately on things like how the Vancouver Women's Library is a library that feminists are setting up as a resource for women, and trans women are protesting it, trying to get it shut down because it includes books that these trans women don't like. Books like that are feminist books written by women like Andrea Dworkin, books that have made a lot of progress for radical feminist thinking, and trans women literally don't even want women to have a library that has these books in them.
They seem to be just protesting because of those certain books.
Yes, they're actually trying to get the books banned from the women's library.
The thing is, I don't understand why opposing opinions have such a big guttural reaction from people.
Mm-hmm. Sometimes the reason they have a big guttural reaction is because that person's real life has been affected by that opinion to an extreme degree. Like I personally have literally been denied a job for being a woman once at Panda Express. It was a few years ago though, so it's like too late for me to sue. But that happened. The guy told me that he wouldn't hire me because he thought that his kitchen guys were too like rude and crude about women, and that he didn't want to put any women in that situation, and that's illegal. It's called harboring an unsafe work environment. If you think that your work environment is not safe for women or minorities to be in, that's called harboring an unsafe work environment. And as a manager, he was committing a crime.
Yeah, and I guess
So, like, I
that's
mean,
just
like,
wrong. But
I mean, my entire childhood was shaped by the fact that my father tried to teach me that I was biologically inferior to my brothers. Like, I mean, I'm the oldest, and yet when my parents divorced, my dad makes sure to tell my little brother that he's the man of the house now. And even now, my little brother thinks that he's more responsible than me just because he's always been told that he is.
I think a lot of this comes from the fact that you have a very old school dad. A lot of fathers,
So,
especially left leaning fathers, are not in any way like this.
do you think you're the first person to say that to me?
No, probably not.
Like, do you know how many times I've heard people say that? Like that do you know how many times feminists throughout history have been told that our issues with the way society is structured is nothing more than a personal problem,
Well,
and that it is
well,
not a
that
wide
is
problem, and that there's so many men who aren't like this, so therefore your problem isn't real, and therefore we should do nothing about this?
no. I'm saying that you're.
I mean, I'm not saying you're arguing that implicitly because it's coming. Your argument is coming from just a basic understanding of the first part. You don't want to feel attacked. Feel like men are the reputation of men is attacked, and that threatens you, and that's an emotional, visceral response. So you want to respond to that by being defensive. And like what you don't realize is all this other shit that's going on with it. Like it's not just a personal problem for me. There are lots of women who are living like this. I'm only bringing myself up it's a fucking double-edged sword. If I don't bring up my personal experiences, then like it makes it harder for me to relate because a lot of people like to relate based on personal experience. You know what I mean? Like that's part of how people communicate. But so if I don't bring up my personal experience, then I'm not making this personal enough. But if I do bring up my personal experience when I talk about this, then it's like nothing I say is valid anymore because it's just a personal problem, and it's not suddenly not something that's affecting women all over the place when it is.
I'm not
You
saying
know,
that. I'm not saying that your experience is not valid. I'm just
oh
saying
yeah,
that it doesn't. That just because you experienced it doesn't mean that it is happening all over. Just on the basis that you experienced it, I
but
bet
it
you
is
it
happening.
happens. It happens a lot. I bet you that. I'm just saying that there is still a very large group of people that aren't like this.
Okay, and I know that. Like, I mean, what you think? I don't have friends in real life? You think
No, no, no.
I mean, like, but it's kind of like it's like if somebody was working in retail and they came up to you after a long day at work, working an 8-hour shift on Black Friday, and they come to you and they're like, "Man, I fucking hate customers." Would you go, oh my God, I'm a customer, and you know what? I am a good customer. Every time I come into a store, I'm always respectful to the people who work there. Like, would you get mad and start explaining to them that not all customers are like that? Or do you think they already maybe understand that and they're just expressing an opinion based on a reality that they live through?
Okay, okay. I concede that. I'm just trying to better understand this because
Oh yeah,
I'm not
definitely.
very.
That's what I'm here for. And like, I mean, I'm passionate about this.
Yeah, I can
Um,
tell.
yeah,
I can tell that this is actually very important to a lot of different people. A lot of people are very attached to this movement. It is a very big movement at the moment.
it's in yeah. I feel there's a lot of things that are really suffering though. Like for example, the women's land movement. Are you familiar with that?
No, I'm not.
Okay, so like a lot of feminists want to do female separatism. They want to create communities of only women, and which is so funny because a lot of the times when what these really radical feminists get accused of is hating men, and these with feminists, if only men hated women the way that women hate men, and by that I mean I'm not saying all men hate women, though, like, maybe, like, structurally, subconsciously, societally, you could argue that, but that's not the point right now. Anyway, the men who hate women are, like, the rapists, the murderers, the abusers. But the women who hate men are women who go and create their own little farm out in, like, Montana somewhere, and they have, like, a bunch of women living there together, and it's just, like, a women-only farm. So, like, to compare the hatred that that these radical feminists have for men with the hatred that men who hate women have for women is kind of interesting. But that was just a side thought. Excuse me, I need some water. Okay, I'm sorry, I lost it. That was a tangent.
Yeah, that was.
Oh yeah, no, the women's land movement is a bunch of women who want to get their own land, women's land, and just create like a women-only commune on it. So yeah, that's the women's land movement, and surprise, surprise, trans women are working to dismantle that too.
Yeah, because they want to be part of it, I guess.
Why don't they just make their own? That's what we did. You can't. They're demanding that another group do labor for them. They're demanding entry into another group's area that they created themselves, and they're not entitled to that, but they act like they are. Just because you're a man with a mental illness that makes you delusional to believe you're a woman doesn't mean you're suddenly entitled to everything women have created for ourselves. You are entitled to a coping mechanism medically, but you're not entitled to all the things women have built specifically for women. Just like that male country club is allowed to be male only if they want to, why can't these women's land communes be women only if we want to?
Yeah, they have their. That's their choice. If it's private land, they can do whatever the fuck they want with it.
Yeah, it is private land. So, and yet these trans women believe they're entitled to it. Or that's why they shut down another women's music festival, the Michigan Women's Music Festival, which had been going on for 40 years, a women-only music festival, which a lot of the times trans women would show up to, and women would be like, oh, okay, and like tolerate their presence because, like, like it's a product of male entitlement. Whereas trans men do not behave in such an entitled way. Trans men do not commit crime. No, remember what I was talking about? Male violence, men commit 90% of rape, men commit 90% of murder. Mm-hmm. Women commit a very small fraction of these things. Well, trans men are about as violent as other female socialized people, but trans women are statistically not any more or less violent than any other man. A study they did in Sweden, which literally included every trans woman in their entire country, found that the rate of violence, the percentage of violence was the same with trans women as with other men. So if women are creating these spaces specifically because men are more violent and we want to get away from this violent male socialization, whether or not all men are violent is irrelevant because statistically men are more violent than women, and we don't know. And we just want to create our own space, which we should be allowed to do as an oppressed group. Black people should be allowed to have Black communities, and Asian people should be allowed to have their communities. Everybody should be allowed to have their own communities that they build for themselves. But you're not entitled to access another person's community without their permission. And that's why the Michigan Women's Music Festival got shut down, was because trans women protested and said that they deserved to be in there, and they got it shut down.
Oh, why would I don't understand this idea of going into your own communities, your own homozygous communities would help any. It just wouldn't help. I don't think that would actually help. That would probably create more hostility between the groups, wouldn't it?
I don't know, like women living in peace on their own are looking to like escape the daily oppression of misogyny and patriarchy and just be happy and live in a place where they can be happy. And I think they have that right to do so.
Yeah,
because
they have every right to go into the
it's because it can get fucking tiring. Like Andrea Dworkin has this quote, which is, to be a socially aware, conscious feminist is to be living in agony. And the reason she says that is because suddenly when you become aware of all these things that you had subconsciously taken for granted, and you suddenly like begin to notice them everywhere, it's fucking insane. Like the way people casually throw around words like bitch or cunt or whore or slut, or the way that like people like try watching an episode of Family Guy without seeing an attack on womanhood as a concept. Like it's just
I call
so everywhere all the time that it's no wonder that like there are women who want to get out of this because they're so hyper aware of what's going on, because and the thing is, like, we're all raised to see it as normal, but at the same time we can start to notice things. We have that ability of consciousness. We can also choose to be purposefully ignorant of the things that are going around us. That's a psychological phenomenon known as willful blindness. There's a book written on the subject. I forgot the name of the author, but the title of the book is Willful Blindness, which describes how people have a psychological function that keeps our brains healthy when we ignore bad things that are going on around us. Because if there were too many bad things, we'd be suffering all the time, and that's mentally unhealthy for us. So when things are, we have this psychological defense mechanism in our brains, we all do, that helps us to believe the world is fair and helps us with cognitive dissonance.
That's interesting. So you're saying that as a defense mechanism, women develop this thing that they don't see the oppression that is being put on them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, everybody does that. Everybody does, like, because it's socialized, it's normal. We accept it as normal, and like it depends on people's unique experiences. Because like that's why being raised in a conservative family, you're more likely to be conservative and not see those things as a problem. Whereas if you're raised in a liberal family, your liberal family will teach you like, oh, those things are problems. You can see it on the outside, but it's easier to see problems that are on the outside than on the inside.
Yeah, that's obvious.
Exactly, and that's what willful blindness is making it more difficult to see your own problems that are affecting you, especially if acknowledging that problem would make a complete change in your life. Like, that's why women who speak out against misogyny and do it a lot get called bitchy, get called annoying, whereas the girl who makes sexist jokes and jokes along with the guys, she's the cool girl. Yeah, she's the girl the guys want to be friends with because she's okay with you, like, making these other nasty jokes about women. Unlike that mean feminist who wants to be respected and not have to hear her womanhood be joked about all the time, every day, as she has heard for her entire life.
Well, here's the thing with guys. Guys make fun of each other all the time, constantly.
But there's a difference between personal ribbing, which is fun, and like then making fun of another person for like their fucking oppression that has literally cost them jobs, literally like judges them in different ways in society. And like there are fun ways to do it too. Like I mean, one time I was having this guacamole contest with this against this guy at a party where we both had to like make guacamole or whatever, and I ended up winning the contest. And I made a little sexist joke like, "Oh, that's what happens when you try to beat a woman in the kitchen," oh, or whatever, you know. But it's like that was like tongue in cheek and funny, and like we can analyze things it's hard to make blanket statements because like all generalizations are false, which is in itself a generalization, which kind of implies that there is kind of like a grain of truth to generalizations as well. So it's like important when we do generalize, because generalizing is important. It's more important that we all realize that we're all speaking with a grain of salt when we generalize, and that we all realize there are exceptions because we're human beings are a diverse species, and even if we're all programmed by the same society, we're also all programmed by different unique experiences and different unique people. Even if we're all participating in the same society using the same language to speak, there's like mediums of communication, and then there's like individual people, and it's like totally like nuts. Sociology is like so fascinating.
Yeah, it is. I wanted to get back to the whole ripping on each other thing because
Yeah.
you see what guys do is we wreck each other like I make fun of my friend because he has diabetes and he makes fun of me because I'm autistic, and it gets so deep, our ribbing on each other to the point where when we get down to the real world, that nothing can physically offend us to the point where there is no way to beat our thick skin. That is one of the coping mechanisms that a lot of people have developed, is to wreck each other to the point where you don't even care.
You know,
That's how you just go through life without giving a fuck.
yeah, I understand that. I have like I used to like pretend to be a man for a long time when I was in high school. I used to like to be called Fred, and I used to emulate male behaviors, act like a man, walk like a man, talk like a man. I would pay really specific attention to how guys behaved and try and act like men. And I still have some like male behaviors, and I understand what you're talking about. I've been in those circles. I used to be one of those girls. All my friends are guys. Like it's still, even now, most of my friends are guys. I still only have like a few lady friends, but like so I understand what you're talking about. But there's a difference between like joking about like there everybody has a line. Everybody has a line you don't cross. You know, it's
Not
different
every.
for
I
everybody.
don't have a line. Neither do
maybe
my
maybe
friends.
maybe like but everybody has a certain line. There's always something for everybody, like whether it's you don't joke about, like some people will get really offended if you joke about disrespecting the military, those same guys who claim to never be offended by anything will get really offended if you make jokes that disrespect the military. Everybody's got something that's sacred to them. They just don't necessarily
The
realize it, because guys especially like to take pride in their thick skin and like to think that they're so thick skinned. You know who's thick skinned is the black lesbian woman who's had been told her whole life that everything about her is makes her literally a biological inferior person, and that is what fucking thick skin is. Thick skin is not just you at the end of the day, your friend still appreciates you, and that your friend is still going to be your friend even if they're just making these jokes. Real thick skin comes from like actually having people put you down and trying to teach you that you are born lesser to other people, that you are subhuman, that your life is not as valuable as other people's because of the way you are born. That is completely different from your friends joking around with you when you know at the end of the day your friend still respects you.
the the thing is, when I make fun of my friends, the whole goal is to get to that point and cross it as many times as possible. That's the whole point. So that when someone comes up to you and just like, oh, you're a stupid nigger or something like that, to the point where you just think that they're fucking retarded. You think that they're idiots and that it doesn't matter because they are fucking retarded if they think
Well, here's
that.
the thing. Well, here's the thing. You don't. Well, maybe what you don't know is that person's father died by a lynching from the KKK, and the whole time the KKK was lynching that person's father, they were saying that N-word over and over again, and maybe that's why the word bothers them so much.
The amount of people that has happened to is very small.
No, it's not, dude. Like,
compared to the vast majority of
right
people alive.
In the 60s, the KKK was lynching people all over the country in the 50s and the 60s. So for somebody today whose dad could have been a victim of that, that is not a small number of people, dude.
Oh, out of the amount of people you will meet in your day-to-day life, the probability of you meeting somebody whose father was lynched by the KKK.
That's something you should. That means you should. That doesn't mean that like you shouldn't realize that this is an institutional, cultural wide problem, and maybe we should be respectful of that.
Who like, likes the KKK though? No, nobody.
Why not just have manners? Why not just have manners and be respectful of each other?
Because respect isn't granted; it's earned.
What earns respect?
Just. I guess you can start anything with mutual good tidings. But that doesn't mean I have to. You don't have to respect anything.
Well, obviously, but like if you just meet a person and like, do they have to do something nice for you before you start doing nice things for them? Do you assume that the onus is always on the other person to impress you in order to earn your respect, or do you start doing nice things first?
It usually depends on
betraying your value of because now suddenly they haven't earned your respect yet. You know what I mean?
It's not that I'm not entitled. I'm not entitled to be respected either. I don't think I should be respected as much either.
Should the default be people not respecting each other because if they're on the same level, or should the default just be people respecting each other and then only losing that respect if they do something shitty?
I guess it depends on every situation, doesn't it?
Because it kind of does, but I would assume that if you meet on a neutral level, maybe you met talking about a neutral subject like cute puppies or something. Would you, and you were just talking about a neutral subject like that, would you give that person respect or treat them with disrespect as default? Which would be the default, respect or disrespect?
The usual default in most conversations is respect, but that doesn't mean that anybody has to respect you and nobody has to not offend you.
I agree with that. Nobody has to not offend you, but at the same time, if a person says something offensive, they should be prepared to face some fucking consequences for that. Because
what if it wasn't meant to offend?
Huh? Intentions don't really. Oh, here's the thing: you can apologize.
Well, what? Okay, if something is not intended, does that make that person?
Offensive? If you don't mean to offend people, and then a person tells you, "Hey, this is offensive. You're offending people," and then you keep doing it, now you're offending them on purpose, and now you're being an asshole, and now you don't deserve to have that opinion be respected anymore. But if you were truly ignorant and you didn't mean to offend people, and you say you're sorry, and then you don't do it again, that's fine. Everybody learns from their mistakes.
What if someone gets offended by something very innocuous?
Well, you can argue about whether or not the statement deserves offense, but everybody's allowed to make their points about that.
But what if, let's say,
and just because you view something as innocuous doesn't mean that the other person should change the way they feel about it just because you don't feel like it should be offensive.
Exactly.
It's up to the person being offended to feel that way.
But then you're at a standstill, because if I don't think it's offensive and you think it's offensive, that doesn't mean I have to respect your offense, and that doesn't mean you have to respect my inoffense.
Exactly.
So then you can just not give a fuck about each other.
Well, yeah, but it doesn't change the fact that I still had to suffer through that shitty feeling. It still makes you a shithole for offending people.
But if I offended someone over something very innocuous, like I said,
it's interesting how men always do that. They always go, "But I did it over something very innocuous. I didn't deserve to receive any criticism."
No, I don't care. I don't care if I get criticized.
Without anybody ever facing me any consequences. When I don't want to think about my behavior. Emotional labor is hard, and morality is so difficult. That's what I hear. That's what I hear. When guys whine like this and be like, the thing I did to this other person is so little, I don't care about their feelings at all because I just should be able to do what I want. I'm a big baby.
Nobody
Poop on
cares about
everything.
anybody's feelings, and nobody should care about anybody else's feelings. Unless you
That's,
know them personally, you don't give a fuck.
well, I mean, I think we should care about each other's feelings in a way. Like, I mean, I think we should form a collective identity as groups of people, and I believe that white people should care about how we treat black people, even when they're not around, because we don't want to be propagating the idea that it's okay to laugh like at black people as if they're inferior just because they're not around. You know what I mean? Like, if you
I
want,
don't. I don't.
if
Nobody
your
makes
goal
fun of
is if
black
your goal
people.
is to if your goal is to end racism or if your goal is to end sexism, then you have to stop putting the drops into the fucking buckets. If you keep filling, like if you have a bucket, which is a drop of water every time someone does something racist or sexist, if you don't want that bucket to stop being filled, the answer is not to keep filling that bucket with more drops. Because every action is like a ripple, the butterfly effect. Every small little thing that we do is emphasized in greater society. And so if we really want a certain mode of thinking to stop, like if we like gladiators aren't a thing anymore, they used to be in ancient Rome, but nobody thinks about gladiators on a daily basis anymore except for maybe like some guy who studies ancient history. But like other than that, people don't think about like gladiatorial fights. They don't make jokes about gladiators every day. It's not a
No,
normal
because
thing because
gladiators don't
basically
exist anymore.
they've gone out of our exactly. They've gone out of our culture. So
No,
we
no
need to
matter
do
what,
that
race
with
is going
sexism
to
and racism.
exist. That is a fact. Race is always going to exist. The fact that someone is a different color will always exist. It's just the concept of it is completely retarded. The
Exactly.
concept
That's
itself
what
of
race is.
race.
The concept of it. So when I'm talking about race, I'm talking about this concept of grouping people into different quote unquote races, as
But
if they were like Dungeons and Dragons races that get different bonuses or detriments based on their skin color or whatnot, which is the fucked up part. But in reality, racism has not existed like for all of human history. Like
it
for
shouldn't.
example, in ancient Greece, they had what we would consider a proto-racism, which was based on ethnicity, actually. But theirs was not an all bad, like all good, like sort of like where we have like in modern racism, which is founded on the chattel slave trade, where they invented slavery based on race. And when slavery based on race was invented, then they needed a reason to justify that. So they spread this cultural belief that white people are innately superior to black people, that black people deserve to be working in the fields because that's all they're good for. And that's where our society comes from. That's the racism of our society.
But
But
who
in the
believes
ancient
that
Greece, they
now?
didn't have that. In ancient Greece, they had, before this, they had a form of ethnicity where they would believe, oh, the Nigerians are super wise and intelligent, but the Vikings are really strong and like physically intimidating, but see, us Greeks were in the middle, so therefore we're the best of both worlds. And that was how proto-racism worked. But but modern racism is a new concept, and we don't have to have it. We can get rid of it.
No shit. It's out. It's lived past its prime, obviously. But racism.
My mom is older than the African American vote, so to say that
How old
racism
is
is
your
over,
mom? Is fucking.
she's like in her 60s.
Oh, okay.
So like my mom is older than the African American vote. That to act like we live in some cultural vacuum that is not affected in any way by history, or to act like the events of the past 100 years aren't still affecting us today is really ridiculous. And because we're not popping into existence without a historical context. We are living history. We are living because of what happened before us, and everything that's happening now is because of what happened before us.
But almost nobody holds these very archaic beliefs. Nobody thinks that the Klan is a good thing. Who
If that's true, how come the Klan has not been shut down by the CIA or the FBI, even though the Black Panther political party was shut down?
because so far the Klan has not done much in recent history. In like the
Dude,
last
dude,
10 to
dude,
15 years, nothing's happened.
dude. Like they could have shut the Klan down in the 80s, but not only that, but the Klan is still doing stuff. Like our society just doesn't care, so it's not reported on. Nobody cares about how Black lives are being treated. And that's why the Black Lives Matter movement exists.
If
Because
the
no
Klan was
is
lynching people at the moment, I'm pretty sure someone would be telling people. I'm pretty sure that wouldn't go unnoticed,
you
right?
can be you can feel that way, but that feeling comes from a psychological belief that the world is fair, that if a bad things happen, justice is served. And that's not the world we live in.
So you're saying black people are being lynched in private by the KKK?
Probably, yeah, I would not disbelieve it. I
But
would
there
not
is no
disbelieve it, and
proof
I
of
have no
this.
reason to believe that they have stopped doing that when that's been what they've been doing. Why would I believe? Why would I give white supremacists the benefit of the doubt to believe that they have stopped doing what they have doing that they have been doing, just because they're trying to hide and be covert?
I don't think they're being that covert. There are vast websites and forums and filled with neo Nazis and Klan members,
Well,
and
yeah,
they
but I guess we meant something different by covert. Could I clarify what I meant by covert?
sure, of course.
I meant culturally covert in the sense of they're trying to rebrand themselves.
It, that's an evolution of their ideology.
I
I
don't
guess if they
believe ideology has truly evolved. I believe they just figured out how to manipulate language to make it look like their ideology is more progressive. Because if you can phrase anything in any way and make it sound like anything, because that's how language works. You can use the right words in the right way. That's what propaganda is.
well, just because they're saying shit doesn't mean that they're inherently bad. They could have very bad ideas. That doesn't mean they're
So did you
doing
just
bad
say that the
things.
KKK is not inherently bad?
I'm saying that their
Like,
actions are not illegal. I'm saying what they
maybe we just
physically
don't.
do.
Here's the thing, though. What if the KKK has some members of it within the police force, and like those police officers just look the other way whenever they get a call come in,
That
because no
is
one's gonna care about little Johnny from the hood who got shot by a white guy, or some missing black kids. Do you know how many missing black kids there are across the country that are missing persons don't care about because they're poor? When they
people
could
don't care
focus
about you
instead
if you're poor.
on
Generally,
yeah, that's true. But but at the same time, if a cute little white girl goes missing, there's a huge nationwide panic because everybody's got to find that cute little white girl. But if it's a black girl or a black boy that goes missing, there's not that same type of panic in society.
that
People don't care as much.
it's. I'm guessing
Or
that
if a black homeless man goes missing and gets lynched by the KKK, who's going to report for him? Who's going to be like, "Oh, I noticed that he wasn't at the shelter anymore." Who's going to care?
nobody
Who's going to
was
care?
gonna care because he's a homeless person, not because he's homeless and
Exactly.
black.
And
Because he's
black
homeless means nobody
and
cares about him at that point.
yeah, and that would mean that the KKK could very easily be lynching black homeless people or kidnapping black people from poor communities to lynch, and nobody would do anything about it.
Then you could have the same. You could say the same thing about white people then being like stolen and put into sex trafficking if they're homeless. Nobody would notice,
Yes,
right?
that's very true. That's very true, and that happens to women, especially in Eastern Europe. Yes.
Yeah, that does happen to women. I'm not saying that sex
Oh
trafficking
yeah.
is good. I'm saying that just because he's black does not mean people care about him less than if he was white. Just because it's because he's homeless. That's why people don't give a fuck about him. That's why nobody in his
So
life
do
cares
you
about him.
believe so you believe that the Black Lives Matter movement doesn't need to exist?
I'm the roots of it. I was actually very against Zimmerman in the Zimmerman and Trayvon case, and then Black Lives Matter has picked their martyrs very poorly since.
What do you think about the case of Sandra Bland, where she was pulled over for not having her blinker on, and then she was like beaten to death, or she died mysteriously, quote unquote, suicide in a police cell when she had refused arrest, and they had beaten her and tased her outside of her car, and there's police footage of her doing that. But anyway, I feel like we've gone way off topic. Did you have any other questions? Because I do want to eat my food also.
Oh, okay. Well, I think that's good enough for now. It's been a very good conversation with you, dude.
Yeah. 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 Okay. Cool. Yeah. Great.